This is a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.
I'm Tony Bruschi. Thanks for joining us. We go now to the courtroom for segment number 1 of today's coverage in the trial of Scot Peterson, the Parkland School resource police officer charged with negligence in failing to protect the children of Parkland as a gunman went through the school executing many, many students. Let's go to the courtroom.
CF10A. I have Ms. Gomes, Mr. Killer, and Mr. Klinger present for the state. I have Mr. Igarsh present with Mr. Peterson, who likewise is present. We are outside the presence of the jury. State, is there anything you need me to address before we get the witness back on the witness stand and go forward with the cross-examination?
Judge, just one thing. Our third witness of the day works in an undercover capacity, and so he'll be wearing the full face covering. I did let the defense counsel know, letting the court know in case he plans on raising any objections. Maybe we can deal with it before the witness walks in, so the court's not caught off guard.
As I told the state, I have no objection.
You have no objection?
Zero.
Okay, so without objection from the defense, I guess we'll proceed as the state wishes. State, anything else?
No objection.
Defense, anything you need me to address?
No, Your Honor.
State, can I ask you, did I see some evidence with Madam Clerk from Mr. Cruz's trial?
Yes, Your Honor. Some of the shell cases.
Are they going to be entered into evidence in this case?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
It'll be this afternoon, yes.
Do we have what I'm most concerned about is that I don't want, I mean, it's not the usual, like with co-defendants, but are the stickers going to be affixed in a manner so that the jurors are unaware that this was evidence in the other case?
Yes, that's the intention. I already spoken to Ms. Wilcox that I'll be putting the stickers exactly over the stickers as they are.
But we've had great experience in that area, again, dealing with co-defendants and trying the same cases multiple times. So I just want to...
Not the white sticker, the pink sticker.
You're talking about the barcode.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't want the barcode.
What does the barcode? Does the barcode have any words on it, or does it just have a barcode?
We'll take a look.
The barcode says, for instance, looking at Broward Clerk Reports, State Exhibit 240, date 10/13/2020. It has a case number and it has a description.
Do you have any objection if those stickers are on there?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. So, and you understand, if you did, I would figure out some mechanism or procedure where they wouldn't be on there.
You have no
But I don't guess it's a secret that there's been a prior trial.
No objection at all.
Okay. State, anything else before we get going?
No, Your Honor.
In defense, you're ready to proceed?
I am, Your Honor.
All right, one thing I do need to put on the record, this is regarding the continued issue with juror number 6. I did communicate with the head of the Human Resources Department of her company. I'm going to keep all that information for me at the present time. By my count, this is day 7 of the trial. She has 10 days before her company's policy, I guess, requires her to start using her PTO time, which obviously I don't want that to happen. I'm currently waiting on communication from the head of their legal department and or the CEO of the company. I will share with you, since I had to go a little deeper into this, that the revenues of this company, which juror number 6 works last year, was $7.8 billion. 7.8 billion with a B. So I have very high hopes they're going to be able to pay her for her service. And I told them if I can't resolve the issue at this point, I might resolve it in a more public manner, but hopefully that will resolve the issue, but I will keep you updated. Okay. Okay, so then can we get the witness back on the witness stand, please? I'll put him under oath and then we'll bring the jury back in. Sir, if I could have you come right back to the witness stand, please.
Yes, sure.
Even though we're outside the presence of the jury, I'm going to swear you in again. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay, you may be seated. And once you are seated, you can scoot that chair all the way forward again. And then please bring the jury back. Thank you.
Jurors entering.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in. Once you're back at those same seats, you may be seated. All right, all the parties may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you using the notepads, I'll give you a moment to get those notepads back out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope you had a nice weekend back at your normal lives. I apologize for the slight delay in getting started this morning. Someone told me that one of you was late getting here, but I find that impossible to believe that could have happened. So I will take the blame for that. Ladies and gentlemen, when we pressed pause on the trial on Friday, we had just concluded the direct examination of the witness. The witness remains on the stand and under oath. So at this point, we're going to proceed with the cross-examination of the witness. Mr. Igarsh, when you are ready, you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court say. Good morning. Good morning, Officer Burton.
Good morning, sir.
This is the second time we've met, correct?
Yes, on the depot and today.
Okay. The depot is short for deposition, correct?
Yes, sir.
You and I spoke, and I asked you a number of questions about what took place that day, correct?
You did, sir.
And there was a court reporter present that recorded everything that was said between us?
It was over video, but yes, there was a reporter there, yes.
Okay. And also the prosecutor was present, correct?
Yes.
And the prosecutor could ask you any questions that the prosecutor wanted, correct?
I believe so.
And you've been through that process numerous times. That wasn't your first deposition in 15 years, correct?
No, sir.
And then what happens is then the transcription is made and you can read through it, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you've probably read through that in preparation for your direct examination, correct?
Yes, I have.
And you met with the prosecutor before you testified, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you discussed what your testimony would be, correct?
Yes, sir.
Not that there's anything improper about that, but that was done as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And did you refresh your recollection by looking over the deposition again, knowing that I would be cross-examining you?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. If I heard you correctly, on Friday, you indicated that you've been serving this community as a law enforcement officer for 15 years, correct?
It's 17 now, sir.
17?
Yes.
Okay. And you are a school resource officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
And just like my client, you work at a high school, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was a high school of how many people?
We're up to 3,000 students.
Are you the only school resource officer at that school?
No, there's 2 of us.
How long have you been at that particular school?
Since the summer of 2018.
And have there always been 3 SROs for, how many students did you say again?
3,000.
3,000. Has there always been 3 of them?
No, it's me and another officer.
Okay. Now, you work for Coral Springs Police Department, correct?
Yes, I do, sir.
And that is separate from Broward Sheriff's Office, correct?
Yes, it is.
You guys have completely different radio systems, correct?
Yes, we do.
And what you say into your radio, you know, wouldn't necessarily go to BSO officers, correct?
I would not know that, no.
And conversely, when BSO, when any of those officers speak into their radios, that would be coming across your radio system, correct?
No, sir.
The only way that that occurs is when the radios are patched, correct?
That is correct.
Tell the jurors what you understand patching to mean.
Patching is something that's done through dispatch. I don't really have that much knowledge on it. The only thing I can tell you is usually in large multi-agency situations, they will patch the radios so everybody can hear each other.
And you expected, because this was such a major event, that like previous major events, the radios would have been patched, correct?
Yes, sir.
You later learned at some point that they were not patched, correct?
Way later.
Gotcha. Monitoring your radio is not something that they tell you in the academy is like optional, correct?
No.
You're supposed to constantly monitor your radio because you'll be held accountable for whatever dispatch is saying, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what fellow officers are saying as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And especially when you're reporting to the scene of an active shooting, you're going to pay particularly close attention to your radio, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because you're getting real-time intelligence that could be critical to your life when you're showing up at a scene, correct?
Yes, sir.
So on your way to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School that horrible afternoon, you would have then, as you're monitoring your radio, heard dispatch announce at 2:26:31 to Coral Springs officers, there is an active shooter working at Douglas, multiple gunshots being fired. Do you remember hearing that?
Yes, sir.
You also heard Sergeant Bill Reed inquire as to whether there was an active shooter at Douglas High School, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then dispatch confirms right after he inquires, yes, shooting confirmed. We're getting phone calls now. Our 911 lines are blowing up. You heard all that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you knew that before you even arrived at the school, correct?
Yes, sir.
What you didn't know when you arrived is how many shooter or shooters there were on campus, correct?
I did not know.
Tell the jurors what the +1 rule is and how you're trained in the +1 rule, please.
Okay. Anytime you respond to an active shooter, there can always be more than one shooter. If you find one shooter on scene, you're going to have to maybe expect there's another one, and so on and so forth, 3 to 4. So
you remember thinking that as you're arriving on campus, even if you might have heard about one, you're constantly thinking there could be more, correct?
Yes, sir.
And when you arrived, you did not know precisely where the shooter or shooters were located, correct?
I did not know.
When you arrive, you called to dispatch to get your arrival time, correct?
No, sir, I'm confused.
Were you told by dispatch that your arrival time was 2:27?
I called on the phone the following day to write my report.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And you learned that your arrival time was 2:27, correct?
Yes, sir.
That would have been 35 seconds before the shooter stopped firing, correct?
Yes, but may I explain?
Okay.
Okay. When the call came out, when Sergeant Bill Reed said that there was, asked if there was an active shooter, then the dispatcher confirmed. That's when I turned on my lights and sirens, and I said that I wanted to say 97 the area, but instead I just said 97. We're allowed to say 97 the area, which means we're close by. I was about maybe a mile and a half away from the school.
Okay. So you arrive at the school and you're armed with both a handgun and an M4 rifle, correct?
Yes, sir.
Which were you holding in your hands?
The M4 rifle.
Why did you choose the M4 rifle as opposed to the pistol or the handgun?
It's a way more powerful gun, and I can shoot it from a long distance.
It would be more beneficial to you in an active shooter situation than a mere firearm, correct?
That is correct.
When you're at your school, and the name of your school is, what's it called?
Coral Glades High School.
Coral Glades High School. When you're at Coral Glades High School, do you walk around with the M4 rifle?
I do not, sir.
Are you even allowed to walk around with that big rifle?
No, sir.
To school? How come?
It's just intimidating to the children. So what we do is we have a gun safe in my office where we keep the N4 on campus.
And some SROs will keep it in their car, correct?
Yes, sir.
And were you wearing a bulletproof vest that day?
I was wearing my normal police uniform.
Do you usually wear your vest while you're on campus?
All the time, sir.
Okay. And when you arrived, was it pandemonium because kids were running around and there's gunfire everywhere, or was it just the opposite?
It was the opposite, sir.
How would you describe it to the jury when you get there?
It was very
2:27.
It was very eerie. When I got out of my car to load up my rifle, I looked west to see if there was anybody running or that I could talk to get information. I was also listening for gunfire, and I did not see any people on campus. I did not hear any gunfire. It was just silent.
Would it be fair that you've characterized it like a ghost town when you arrived?
Yes, sir.
Now, the first person that you encounter when you arrive on campus is campus monitor Andrew Medina. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And Medina gives you some real-time intelligence, correct?
Yes, he does.
He tells you that we are looking for a white male, correct?
Yes.
In a burgundy shirt.
A burgundy ROTC uniform shirt.
Black pants.
Yes, sir.
And then he specifies that he was last seen around the 3-story building.
Correct.
Also known as the 1200 building, correct?
That is correct.
And then he also tells you, or possibly the northeast parking lot, correct?
Correct.
You thought that information was so significant that you immediately then broadcast it on your Coral Springs radio, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you announce at 2:28:35, you recall saying, white male with ROTC uniform, burgundy shirt, correct?
Correct.
And then dispatch repeats, white male, ROTC uniform, burgundy shirt, correct?
Correct.
And then at 2:29, literally 25 seconds later, you announce, last seen in the 3-story building, north parking lot.
Yes, sir.
I want to understand what you meant in that moment with that statement, because you agree that in the 3-story building, when you say last seen in the 3-story building, is different than north parking lot, correct?
They're two separate places on campus, sir.
Okay. So when you say last seen in 3-story building, north parking lot, you're actually referring to two different locations, correct?
Yes, sir.
So last seen in the 3-story building means last seen inside that building, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then north parking lot would have been by the 1200 building, correct?
Yes, sir.
So by or inside, correct?
I wanted to use the 3-story building as my reference of go-to for everyone.
Is it fair to say, though, that you were essentially saying that it's either by or inside the 1200 building, correct?
Like I said, I was using it as a reference, but it could be correct.
Is it fair to say that Medina was not certain of the exact location of the shooter or shooters, correct?
He was not.
He only knew a general area, correct?
Yes, sir.
You didn't know at that moment whether he ever transmitted that information over the school radio so that my client could hear that, correct?
I didn't know that.
And nor did you order Medina, and this is non-judgment. None of what I'm saying is judgmental. I'm just asking you factually. You never ordered Medina to then get on the school radio and announce that information, correct?
I did not.
And you certainly never conveyed all that information to my client at any point, correct?
I did not.
Then 45 seconds after your transmission at 2:29:47, you heard dispatch announce. Dispatch advises that there are 3 victims down in room 1216 in the freshman building. You heard that, correct?
I did not, sir.
You don't dispute that that came over the Coral Springs police radio, correct?
At the time, I was under high stress, adrenaline, actively looking for a possible shooter in the parking lot. So I may not have caught everything that was on the radio, sir.
At 2:31:31, you announce over your radio, I am on the east side of the 3-story building near the parking lot with my long gun, correct?
Yes, sir.
Why is it important for you to tell your fellow officers where you're located?
So there's not officer on officer fire, and it also gives them another reference of where to respond.
So when an officer announces on their police radio, 1200 building or parking lot or giving a location, they're being of service to their fellow officers, correct?
Yes, sir.
To better serve the very children that they're there to assist, correct?
Yes, sir.
And faculty and staff, correct?
Yes, sir.
You immediately continue in that 2:31:31 transcript. You say, I will let you know where it is. It's the 3-story.
I'm objecting here, sir.
Yeah, that's his thing.
Do you recall getting on your police radio and saying the following? I will let you know where it is. It's the 3-story building at the northeast corner. It's considered the freshman building. Do you remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that, but if it's on the transcript, I must have said it.
That information you never conveyed to my client, correct?
I did not.
It went out over your radio, Coral Springs radio, which you believed was patched with BSO, correct?
I had no idea if the radios were patched yet.
But you learn literally 7.5 minutes later at 2:39:18 when dispatch tells you, we need to get these radios patched with BSO. You heard that, right?
I'm objecting here, saying as well.
Yeah, that's his thing.
Did you or did you not hear dispatch inform you that the radios needed to be patched with BSO?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, that's his thing. Mr. Agash, what you're reading from is not in evidence. So you can ask this witness direct questions, but I can't have you reading to the jury items that are not in evidence. Go ahead.
Did you ever hear anyone inform you that we're like working 2 separate operations unless the radios get patched?
Objection, same objection, Your Honor.
That is sustained.
Did you believe if the radios were not patched that you would be working like 2 separate investigations?
That thought never crossed my mind, sir.
So Medina then drives you in a golf cart and drops you off at the northeast parking lot. Isn't that correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
And with all the information that you had, once you get to the parking lot, you don't run right into the 1200 building, did you, sir?
No, I did not.
You knew that a shooting had taken place, correct?
Yes, sir.
You must have known potentially that there were people that might have been harmed in the 1200 building, correct?
I did not know that at the time, sir.
Now, after you arrive, based on the information that you had, you had a very general idea of where you thought the shooter or shooters might have been, correct?
Yes, sir.
You certainly couldn't narrow it down to just the 1200 building, correct?
No, sir, I could not.
It included a very large area of campus, did it not?
It did.
So when you get there, one of the possibilities on your mind is that the shooter or shooters could have been inside the 1200 building, correct?
The first thought when I got to the parking lot was to focus on the northeast parking lot.
I understand. My question is, in terms of where you're narrowing it down, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the possibilities in your mind is that the shooter or shooters could have possibly been inside the 1200 building, correct?
Yes, sir.
Also, the shooter or shooters could have been on top of the 1200 building, correct?
The shooter or shooters could have been anywhere in that general area.
I understand, but I want to break down and you tell me if any of the places that I'm mentioning to you were something you completely eliminated or whether that was in the realm of possibility, okay?
Okay, sir.
So if you believe that the shooter or shooters could have been on top of the 1200 building, that would have included all the way west of the 1200 building, correct?
Yes, sir.
Could have been all the way east, closest to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And could have included all the way in between as a possibility, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this building, if I told you it was 73 yards long, 3/4 of a football field, is that consistent with what you saw?
Yes, sir. It's a big building.
You also believe that the shooter or shooters could have been on any of the sides of the 1200 building, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it could have been on the north side, which extends 73 yards, correct?
Yes, sir.
South side, correct?
Yes, sir.
And by the way, the areas around the north and south side, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the west side, which you couldn't see from your position, correct?
I could not see it, correct.
And let me just specify, you can identify for us. I'm showing you what is already in evidence as Defense Exhibit 1. Is this the west side of the building?
That is, it's not the east side.
Correct. So this was the opposite side from you, correct?
Yes, sir.
You couldn't see Aaron Feiss on the ground from where you were positioned, correct?
I could not.
But the shooter or shooters could have easily been on the west side of the building, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was in your state of mind as you arrived there, correct?
Yes, sir.
You also couldn't rule out any of the neighboring parking lot areas, correct?
I could not.
In fact, that was actively one of the places you thought the shooter or shooters could have been located, correct?
Yes, sir.
If I can show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit F, and if I can approach, show us if this is the 1200 building and this is the 1300 building. There are parking lots on the north side of those buildings. Could you include that area as where the shooter or shooters may have been located?
You could.
Could you also include to the right of the 1200 building, we'll call that northeast, could you include that parking lot?
Yes, sir.
And then you certainly could include this would be kind of, how would you describe this parking lot? Because this is the one that you
That's like the main parking lot in front of the school.
Okay. Would you consider that as in play or not?
I didn't at the time.
Fair enough. Describe for the jurors how large these parking lot areas are.
It's very large, sir. It's a couple rows filled with students' cars. I believe they refer to it as the senior lot.
Right. And I mean, this school has 3,300 kids. You're aware of that, correct?
Yes, sir.
This parking lot is like potentially football field large, correct?
Yes.
And there are numerous places that shooter or shooters could be located, correct?
Yes, sir.
Lots of places for them to hide because of the cars in the parking lot, correct?
Yes, sir.
You also, when you get to the scene, don't eliminate the possibility that the shooter or shooters could be in a neighboring building, correct?
Correct.
Like the 1300 building that we just looked at, that was also in play. You couldn't rule out the 1300 building, correct?
I couldn't see that from my vantage point, but it could have been a possibility, yes, sir.
Which then means the courtyard area between the 12 and 1300 building was also a possibility when you approach in the parking lot, correct?
Yes, sir.
So this wasn't a small, restricted area that you were considering, correct?
No, sir, it was very large.
Would cover massively, east and west, north and south, numerous football fields as a geographical area, correct?
Yes, sir.
With buildings, and within the buildings, numerous places for someone to hide, correct?
Correct.
And that's why then you don't just run to a specific location, correct?
Correct.
Now, without question, you are trained, and I think this was your testimony on Friday, that if you have an active shooter or shooters, and you know precisely where the shooter or shooters are located, it's your responsibility to go after wherever he or she goes, correct?
That is correct.
But that wasn't your scenario here, correct?
It was not.
You did not know precisely where the shooter or shooters were located, correct?
I did not.
And even after listening to your radio on the way to the school, correct?
Yes, sir.
And even after speaking with Andrew Medina, correct?
Yes, sir.
And even after getting to the scene and analyzing everything, correct?
Correct.
And even after, we'll get to it, your chat with Deputy Peterson, correct?
Yes, sir.
And after continuing to monitor what you're seeing, you still didn't know precisely where the shooter or shooters were located. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So you followed your training, didn't you, sir?
Yes, I did.
It's critical to follow how you've been trained, correct?
It is.
You got to the point of what we call last reference, correct?
Correct.
Tell the jurors what last reference is.
The information that Campus Monitor Medina gave me was the 3-story building or the northeast parking lot. So I gave my police department the reference of the 3-story building as that's where we need to go.
And so physically, you got to the closest parking lot area that you can get to the 1200 building, correct?
Correct.
And you positioned yourself literally in shouting distance from my client who was to your left, correct?
That's correct.
You didn't even need your radios to communicate. You could speak to him. He was so close to you, correct?
We're about 40 yards apart.
But no difficulty hearing what he was saying to you, correct?
That's correct.
And you relaying information to him, correct?
Correct.
And then what you do once you get to the closest reference point is you take a position of cover, do you not?
I do, sir.
Now, they train you not to take a wild guess and just start to run in any direction, correct?
Correct.
That wouldn't have been tactically sound in this scenario, correct?
It would not have.
Tell the jurors why, if you've got all these different options, you don't just say, I don't know, he could be in the 1300 building or the 1200 building or the football field, or let me just start running. Why don't you do that?
If there's no sound of gunfire and you've reached the last point of reference, there's really no reason for you to be running all over campus.
And or what happens if you hear gunfire, but you have no idea where it's coming from? Same scenario, correct?
I would still try my best to respond to the gunfire, maybe a little more of a tactical type of search. It would be more difficult, but I would still make an attempt to find it, sir.
I understand. Your scenario was you had no idea where to possibly go, correct?
That's correct.
And if that's the scenario, if you just don't know and your possibility covers football fields and football fields, what do? You take a tactical position of cover, don't you, sir?
Correct.
And that's what you did, didn't you, sir?
Yes, sir.
At no point did you ever believe, my goodness, we're dealing with one shooter, correct?
Correct.
That's inside the 1200 building, correct?
Correct.
Killing innocent children, correct?
Correct.
That's not the thought in your mind while you're taking a tactical position of cover, correct?
It's not.
Obviously, if you thought that, you're trained to go in, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, we've been calling a position of cover and a tactical position of cover. Explain to the jurors what you call it, what you did that day.
So, when Campus Monitor Medina let me out of the golf cart, I immediately ran to what's called a position of cover. I used a tree trunk and an SUV. I basically used the frame of the car to protect my body.
This was a black SUV, correct?
It was, sir.
And using a concrete wall, for example, would provide the same type of protection, correct?
Yes, sir.
If there was a concrete wall, you would have gotten behind that concrete wall, correct?
Yes, sir.
But there was no concrete wall. You used a tree and an SUV, correct?
That's correct.
And you were as close as 30 yards to that 1200 building, correct?
That is correct.
And when you consciously chose to take a position of cover and not run in, that was a decision that you made based upon the limited information that you had, correct?
I stopped between the tree trunk and the SUV to assess my next possible tactical move.
Because you don't just go running in without thinking, correct?
That's correct.
Why, explain to the jurors, why you wouldn't just stand out in the open like this?
We didn't know where the shooter was at, so I'm not going to risk getting shot. The smartest thing to do was to communicate to Deputy Peterson behind a tactical position of cover.
Now, there's a difference between cowarding and taking a tactical position of cover.
That's correct.
Explain to the jurors what cowarding looks like.
Cowarding would be ducking, hiding, not having your gun out. What was the other one, sir?
That would be cowarding, right? When you're not taking
correct.
your gun out.
I forgot
right?
what the other one was.
Tactical position of cover.
Okay.
What does that look like?
Okay. In this example, it would be have your gun out, looking around for possible shooters, assessing the situation, talking on your radio, giving out intel.
When you take your tactical position of cover, you have a visual on Scot Peterson, do you not?
I do.
He is off to your left, correct?
That's correct.
And the 1200 building's right in front of you, correct?
Correct.
And so you're looking at Scot Peterson, and you got a chance to look at him for at least 20 to 30 minutes, did you not, sir?
I did.
You could see him the entire time that you're there. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct.
Describe the position that you see my client in.
When I first arrived to the tactical position of cover, I looked to my left and I saw Deputy Peterson with his gun drawn in a low ready position. He was using the concrete column as cover, and he was looking east and west.
Okay. Judge, with the court's permission, I'd like him to demonstrate for the jurors what he saw.
Sure.
Thank you. Could you use one of the walls, whichever you're convenient with, and show us? Do you have? It might be one of these if it's big enough.
If this was a complete concrete wall, okay, he was in a position like this and looking like this, and then he and I were talking in this direction.
Got it. So he has his gun out. In that demonstration, he's got his gun out.
Yes, this is called a low ready position.
Okay. And they train you to be in that position, correct?
There's different positions, but this is one of them, yes.
And I also, again, I don't want to supplement the record. I saw you moving your head back and forth. Is that what I saw?
Yes, sir.
Is that what you saw my client doing?
Yes, I did.
And you saw him not fixated on one particular building. You saw him looking east and west, correct?
That is correct.
In fact, you can sit down. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
In fact, you saw him, your testimony is, you saw him looking all around, correct?
I didn't use the word all around. It was east and west.
Okay. And you also saw him going from shoulder to shoulder, correct?
That's correct.
Both monitoring his radios, correct?
Correct.
And you're in the unique position of also being a school resource officer like my client.
Yes, I am.
Correct? So you have both a police radio, correct?
Correct.
And a school radio, correct?
That is correct.
So you've had thousands of times where you're monitoring both your school and your police radio, correct?
That's correct.
That's not easy to do, is it?
It's not.
Explain for the jurors how that could be difficult.
Like right here would be my police radio. On my right shoulder, I use my school radio. The police radio is giving out city information, and the school radio is giving out the local school information.
So you'd have to be multitasking, correct?
Correct.
And then let's add another scenario. Have there been times in your career where you're listening to your police radio, you're listening to your school radio, and you're speaking on both?
Sir, there's been times where I've said my police call number on my school radio, which doesn't apply, and I've done it vice versa.
And it's worse in stressful situations, correct?
Correct.
But now let's add another thing. Has there ever been a time where you're listening on your school radio and you're listening to your police radio and you're talking on both, but you're also trying to pay attention to what's going on in front of you?
That would be multitasking. It would be pretty hard, difficult.
Tell the jurors how things are going to be setting you up for failure in that scenario.
Your attention would be taken away from the threat that's out there, possibly in front of you or around you.
It's also what we call divided attention, correct?
Correct.
DUI officers are trained to ensure that people are not driving drunk and having divided attention, correct?
That is correct.
Because of having divided attention, you can miss transmissions, correct?
That is correct.
In fact, that happened to you. That was the explanation you offered earlier as to why you missed 3 kids being down in classroom 1216, correct?
That's correct.
You can miss things that are going on in front of you, correct?
Correct.
You can miss both school and police transmissions, correct?
Correct.
And you can even say things not exactly as you intended because you've got divided attention, correct?
Correct.
So I want to return to when you take a position of cover, correct?
Correct.
You don't go into the 1200 building, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you know at that point when you're doing that, the shooting had just finished and that there could be kids bleeding out, correct?
That was a possibility, yes, sir. But I did not know what was going on inside the building at the time.
But one of the possibilities is that kids could be bleeding out, correct?
That's correct.
And you made a choice not to go in. And I don't say this with judgment. I'm just getting facts, okay?
I object to counsel testimony.
Yeah, that's sustained. Go ahead. Ask your next question.
Factually, though, knowing that kids could potentially be bleeding out, you made the choice to stay covered, correct?
Based upon the information that I received from Deputy Peterson, factored into why I stayed in a tactical position of cover.
Let's talk about that then.
Okay.
So you're in a position of cover. You want to know what my client knows, correct?
Correct.
And that factored into your decision-making, correct?
Correct.
And you've known Scott for years, correct?
I've known him for 7 years.
As far as you know, he's never lied to you, correct?
That's correct.
Honorable officer, correct?
Yes, sir.
Decent, dedicated, correct?
Objection is irrelevant, sir.
No, that's overruled. Go ahead, sir. You can answer the
You
question.
can answer that.
Yes, he had a good track record.
Okay. And you worked investigations and things together too, correct?
We did.
Drug cases, correct?
Mostly gang activity with some drug cases, yes.
No issues ever with him cowarding, correct?
No, sir.
Or him being a liar to you, correct?
No, sir.
Just the opposite, correct?
That's correct.
So when my client shares with you in real time, when you get there, and you say, hey, what's up? What do we got? And my client tells you he hasn't heard gunfire in a few minutes.
That's correct.
You believe that, correct?
Correct.
And that was your understanding too, because you hadn't heard gunfire in the couple of minutes that it took you to get to where you were, correct?
That is correct.
He also then, number 2, he makes it very clear to you that he doesn't know the precise location of the shooter or shooters, correct?
That's correct.
Now, when he said that to you, did you think he was lying to you?
No, sir.
You believed it, correct?
I did.
The manner in which he said it, the words that he used, and the energy that he put behind it, you absolutely believed it to the core, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the other thing he tells you, as you're facing him, correct?
Correct.
He says, watch your back. The shooter may be hiding behind you in the parking lot, correct?
That's correct.
So you believed he genuinely was looking out for you, correct?
I did.
And you also genuinely believe that the shooter, if you can show us where he's referencing, if you could stand up, please. Show us approximately where you were positioned and then which parking lot he's referring to.
Deputy Peterson is right here.
Okay.
I am...
That would be between the corner of the 7 and 800 building, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm just going to say I am right here by the tree
Okay.
and the SUV, so we're communicating back and forth.
Uh-huh.
So somebody could be hiding in this entire area right here based on his intel.
And this lot right here is huge, correct?
It's very big.
Like football field huge, correct?
Objection has been answered, Your Honor.
That's sustained.
Okay, you can have a seat. And you thought that he was being of assistance to you, correct, when he said that?
Yes,
correct?
sir.
And at no point did you think that he was making that up. You believed it, correct?
That's correct.
And in that parking lot, when he said that, did you take another glance behind you? Did you look?
I immediately turned around and I grabbed my rifle and immediately started to scan the parking lot. I also stood up on the curb to make myself taller so I could see over everything.
And in your mind, especially when you're getting that real-time intelligence from my client, you're believing the shooter or shooters could be anywhere, correct?
That's correct.
Now, shortly thereafter, a team of Coral Springs officers enter on the west side of the 1200 building, correct?
That's correct, but I did not know that at the time.
That was my next question. You couldn't see from where you and Scott were positioned, you could not see the west side door where they entered, correct? You couldn't see this.
No,
correct?
sir.
You're somewhere on the other side of this building, all the way down here. You couldn't see that they made like a 6-man entry into the west side, correct?
I could not see that.
So you certainly didn't know to join them to go in, correct?
I did not know.
And did they announce over your radio, hey, we're going in? These are Coral Springs officers. Would they have announced on the radio at the time, hey, we're going into the 1200 building?
They could have, but I don't know. I didn't pick it up.
So you believe it's possible that they might have announced it or not, correct?
It's a possibility.
But even if you did hear it, it was your determination at that moment to still not join them and stand your ground, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, based on the intel that I was provided.
Because you wanted to wait till you had a few more guys to show up before you left that position of cover, correct?
Correct, because at the time it was just me and Deputy Peterson on the east side of the school.
And that wasn't enough for you to go searching on your own, correct?
Correct. The feeling that I had was if I left my tactical position of cover,
yes,
that possibly Deputy Peterson could be exposed. And also I wanted to protect guys as they were starting to come into the area around us.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Now you do see a group of officers start to go in on the east side of the 1200 building, correct?
Correct.
For sure you saw those officers, correct?
I did.
And then you did not leave your position of cover to go join them to go in. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. I wanted to join them, but again, if I would have left my position of tactical cover, the parking lot still would be unsecure.
You even told Scott that a search team of guys were coming. They were on their way to join you and Scott, correct?
I did, because from his vantage point, he couldn't see them coming in as a stack.
And even as these officers are entering the east side, you're consciously believing that there could be gunfire that could be coming from another area that could cause that entry team harm, correct?
Yeah, it was my concern that it was a possibility that somebody could pop up and start shooting.
You would describe this situation as very fluid, correct?
I just dealt with the situations as it was going on.
In other words, your level of awareness changes based upon the information that you receive, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Now, you're aware that during the shooting, since you were very close to my client, that he ordered the assistant principal to go in to watch surveillance video to find out where the shooter or shooters were located, correct?
I did not know that.
You did hear my client yelling things that were being relayed to him, correct?
I don't recall Deputy Peterson ever telling anyone to review video.
Fair enough. Do you hear him saying the shooter may be on the second or third floor?
I never heard that, sir.
Okay. Certainly that information could not be ascertained by you by looking at the building, correct?
That's correct.
I mean, you can't see in the windows, correct?
I could not.
You do know that somebody's watching a video because you hear someone say, hey, we're watching video. He's in the building.
Objection
You did hear that.
Your Honor.
Yeah, that's sustained.
At any point, did it become aware to you? Did it become known to you that he was in the building?
Yes, somebody on the radio said we're reviewing real-time footage that he's in the building.
And so even when you hear that he's in the building, you do not leave your position of cover to go in the building, correct?
At that time, there were already a lot of officers going in the building. So from where I was, I took a different position of cover.
So when you learn and you hear someone say, we're watching video, he's in the building, that's when in your mind you're going, goodness, I could be facing sniper fire, correct?
Yeah, it was a concern that the shooter may start firing down from the windows onto us.
And you and Scot Peterson, who was standing near you, you were in the most vulnerable positions for that, correct?
I was, yes.
And Scott was as well, correct?
He could have been. I mean, he was still we're still 40 yards apart in our same positions.
You referred to it earlier, but I want to go into it a little deeper about how stressful of a situation this was, correct?
Correct.
Not as calm as this courtroom as we're reviewing your actions, correct?
Correct.
Or Scott's actions, correct?
Correct.
Describe for them with words just how stressful it was when you got there, which would have been after the gunfire, correct?
Correct.
And after the students were running all around on the campus, correct?
That was later after this video.
And would have been after the fire alarm went off, correct?
I never heard any fire alarm at the school, sir.
So we're talking about your scenario. And even then you thought it was extremely stressful of a situation, right?
Yes, sir.
Describe for the jurors what you were feeling in that moment.
When I was responding to this incident, I'll go back to when I was driving my car and they told me that this incident was happening at Douglas High School. Adrenaline immediately kicked in. When I arrived at the school and rode on the golf cart with campus monitor Medina, I was starting to mentally prepare myself for a possible gun battle. And then as soon as he dropped me off in the north lot, I basically had another bit of adrenaline. And then when later on, when they started bringing out deceased students and I got close up with the deceased student, more adrenaline. So the adrenaline, the stress, the constant looking and searching and wondering, it eventually starts to, I mean, you're trained, but it starts to take its toll.
In fact, you had what you describe as at least 2 to 3 adrenaline dumps at the time, correct?
That's correct. I've described all of them.
Okay. And while you're having an adrenaline dump, you can forget things, correct?
It's called auditory exclusion.
Tell the jurors about auditory exclusion.
When you're so in the moment and you have adrenaline, there's going to be some things that you hear that are distinct, and then there's going to be other things that you just, it's happening, but you're not hearing it.
So even the sound of gunfire, as loud as it can be, auditory exclusion could cause you not to hear shots, correct?
That could be correct.
And also, tell the jurors about tunnel vision. Did you experience that as well?
I did. So tunnel vision is kind of where, I'll refer to it as this, it's like HD in the center of your eyes, and then around your peripheral vision is foggy.
So what could happen when you have tunnel vision? You're focused on something. What can happen in your periphery?
You could miss something.
Okay. So if you're staring, let's say, west, and let's say kids are running out of a building, you could miss someone on your periphery, correct?
That's a possibility.
And you specifically experienced that, correct? On that day. Correct?
I experienced tunnel vision, correct.
But some would say, well, you're tough cops. Doesn't training just eliminate all the stress that you deal with?
Objection is contested.
Well, hold on, I didn't hear the question yet. What's the question?
Doesn't training just eliminate all of these adrenaline dumps or auditory exclusions or tunnel vision? Doesn't just training get rid of all that? Can you answer, Judge?
Well, yeah, you asked a different question. You still have the same objection?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, sir. You may answer the question.
Okay, we're human beings, so we're going to have those feelings. Training helps out tremendously, but like I said, we're human, and sometimes our human emotions take over.
And you experienced all those experiences, adrenaline dump, auditory exclusion, and tunnel vision, standing just a short distance away from my client. Isn't that correct?
It was over different periods of my entry into the school.
Now, you never went into the 1200 building the entire time you were there, correct?
I did not.
And you did see at least a victim when a law enforcement officer asked you to assist in putting that victim on a golf cart, correct?
That's correct.
That was the only time you ever saw victims, correct?
No. After that, I rescued 2 female students after that.
The first time, however, that you learned that there were victims inside the 1200 building was after you left the school, correct?
I don't know what you mean by that, sir.
The first time that you became aware that there were victims inside the 1200 building was sometime after you left the school, and you learned that there were victims inside the 1200 building. You didn't know it when you were there, correct?
Yeah, during the process of us being there, the victim toll kept mounting. So yeah, at the end of it, I didn't know that there were 34. So yes, I did not. I did learn that after I left the school.
Shifting gears, you're a school resource officer at Coral Glades High School, correct?
Yes, sir.
Before that, you were a school resource officer at Eagle Ridge Elementary, correct?
Correct.
Both you and Scot Peterson were school resource officers on the day of the shooting, correct?
Correct.
Now, a school resource officer is a police officer, correct?
Correct.
Who is assigned to a school instead of working out on the street, correct?
Correct.
You guys train with all the other officers, correct?
Correct.
The training material is the same, correct?
For certain things, not for our agencies, but for certain trainings that we would do collectively, yes.
You have the same uniforms, correct?
No, sir.
You school resource officers have different, in Coral Springs, the school resource officers have different uniforms?
Well, color-wise, we're blue and BSO is green.
Oh, no, I got that.
Okay.
I meant...
Sorry.
No, maybe it was me.
Yeah.
All Coral Springs police officers who work the street have the same color uniform as the school resource officers from Coral Springs.
That is correct. We're dressed the same.
The badges look the same, correct?
Correct.
Same bosses and superiors, correct?
Correct.
Same place that you get your checks from, correct?
Correct.
Now, a school resource officer is different than, let's say, a school monitor, a campus monitor, correct?
That is correct.
You have those at your high school, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they don't work for the police department, correct?
No, they don't.
They work for the school, correct?
That is correct.
They don't have arrest powers, correct?
Correct.
And they don't go to the police academy, correct?
They do not.
You don't work for the school system, correct?
I do not.
Teachers don't give you orders, correct?
That's correct.
Administrators don't tell you how to do your job, correct?
They do not.
The principal can't order you to do something.
That's correct.
And you have arrest powers over teachers,
Correct.
administrators,
Correct.
faculty,
Correct.
the principal,
Correct.
and over students, correct?
Correct.
Have you ever conducted criminal investigations at either of the schools that you work for?
Yes, I have.
You do that quite often, correct?
Correct.
Kids have, give us some examples, just so I can use this.
In the public school system, we have issues with fighting, with some weapons. There's some other things. We have some child abuse cases, sex cases. So those are some of the main ones.
And also with drugs, correct?
Correct.
So drugs and weapons, kids bring those to school, correct?
Yes, they do.
So do you ever conduct searches?
Yes, sir.
And searches, are you permitted to simply go up to any student on a hunch and just start searching through their pockets?
No, sir.
Because tell the jurors why.
You have to have levels of suspicion, reasonable suspicion, probable cause. You have to follow those levels.
And do you mind if I ask you, are you a parent?
I am.
Okay. The Constitution doesn't prevent you from going up to your kid's pocket and putting your hand in there and taking something out if you suspect on a hunch they might have something, correct?
As their father, I would be allowed to do that.
A little different, right?
Yes.
Your rights as a police officer is very different than the right of yours as a parent, correct?
That is correct.
And you said you have 3,000 kids at Coral Glades High School, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you and or the other SROs at the school ensure that all kids are properly nourished each day?
No.
Objections are relevant, Your Honor.
No, that's just overruled. Go ahead, sir. You can answer the question.
I have nothing to do with nourishment, sir.
Do you ever assemble all the kids together and make sure that they're properly hydrated?
No, sir.
Do you ever bring the students into your office and stare at them physically to ensure that they don't have any bruises on them?
I would only do that for a possible battery or child abuse case, but not on an everyday, no.
So you're not making routine inspections on these kids to ensure that they're not suffering abuse from somewhere, correct?
That's correct.
That's not your job, correct?
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
That's not your job, correct? To ensure that every kid on that campus isn't facing possible abuse somewhere, correct?
If they are facing abuse, I would investigate it.
But of course. But you don't proactively look at each kid to ensure that they're free from any abuse, correct?
Most of those cases come to me.
Got it. Have you ever read Miranda to any students?
Yes, sir.
And you would say to them, you have the right to remain silent, correct?
Correct.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, correct?
Correct.
And you would want them to waive Miranda so that they can then speak with you, correct?
Correct.
And if they speak to you and say something incriminating, you intend to put that on a report and it will be used against them, correct?
That's correct.
After you've read, how many times have you read Miranda to students over your 15-year career as an SRO?
I couldn't give you a definitive number.
Right, but a large number, correct?
Correct.
On any of those occasions, after reading Miranda, did you ever stop and say to the student, hold on. Don't answer that question because it could adversely affect you. It could affect your future. It could cause you to get arrested. Have you ever taken that role on?
Objection is to compound and counsel testifying.
It's sustained as to compound. Go ahead, sir. Ask your next question.
After reading Miranda, did you then ever tell a student why they shouldn't answer those questions?
I've never done that.
Have you ever heard the sound of gunfire outside?
I have.
In fact, your shooting range is outdoors, isn't it?
That's correct.
Are there any buildings in close proximity to the shooting range?
The shooting range is in an industrial park, so there's some large warehouses around the vicinity of the range.
Is it always possible to pinpoint the exact location of the origination of gunfire?
You'll hear a very large bang and an echo.
So you have echo on your range because there's buildings in the area, correct?
That's correct.
And what are your buildings made of?
Concrete.
What are the buildings made of on Marjory Stoneman Douglas?
Concrete.
So you know firsthand that when you're shooting outdoors around concrete buildings, there could be a pronounced echo, correct?
That's correct.
And that could interfere with your ability to know precisely where the shots are coming from, correct?
Correct. It could interfere.
Do you remember Friday when you identified Scott's voice on some of the dispatch transmissions?
I did.
I'd like you to identify a few more, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, with the state's help. Let's go to 22538 first.
Your Honor, we'll need the...
And I'm finishing up, sir. I just have a few more areas.
I think, aren't you good?
We'll need the monitors off, though.
Oh, you need,
Judge,
this is audio.
It has video, too.
Yeah, I just want the audio.
Oh, you just want the audio.
Yeah. And I just see one of the jurors raising their hands, Judge.
Oh, do we need a restroom break?
No, never mind, it wasn't on. Fixed now, sorry.
There we go. Okay. And when you're ready, you may, Court Deputy Unit, tell me when the TVs are off, please.
Good, Judge.
Understood.
22538. I want you to listen to this and tell me if you recognize the voice.
Doing route. They started with firecrackers that went out. It's going to be the 300 building. It's going to be right off of Kohberger Road by the senior lot.
That was Scot Peterson, right?
Correct.
All right, but that wasn't the one. We're going to keep going.
Keep the school locked down, gentlemen.
Okay.
That's Scot Peterson.
That was Scot Peterson saying, let's get the school locked down, correct?
Correct.
Under the circumstances, thinking that there might have been people wandering around with guns or sniper fire, that would have been a prudent thing to order, correct?
Correct.
And that would have been for the benefit of the students and faculty and staff and police officers, correct?
Correct.
All right, 22640, please.
Started with traffic anywhere. So I got more students running west towards the football field. 3, we're going to Bravo. I hear shots fired.
All right. Did you hear that voice saying, I hear shots fired?
Yes, sir.
Who did that sound like?
Scot Peterson.
Okay. And you're trained that when you hear shots fired to announce that over your radio, correct? And not to keep that to yourself, correct?
In this example, I would, if I say shots fired, I better be running towards it.
I understand. And that presupposes that you know where to run, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes, sir.
If you don't know where to run, I'm focused on announcing it over the radio and letting people know you're hearing additional shots. That's being of service, correct?
That's correct.
And that's how you're trained, correct?
That's correct.
22730.
Fire, stop. Julie 3, make sure I have a unit over in the front of the school. Make sure nobody comes inside the school.
Who said that? Make sure that nobody comes inside the school, correct?
That was Deputy Peterson.
And he's further emphasizing, is he not, to keep the school locked down, correct?
Correct.
Which again, you still find prudent, correct?
Yes.
And consistent with your training, correct?
Yes, sir.
228, please.
Unit to shut down Kohberger, advise.
I'm going to build I'm trying to get open the fence open.
Building 13 and 900 building.
Now.
Alex, do not approach the 12 or 1300 buildings. Stay at least 500 feet away at this point.
Okay, pause for a second. Who was that voice? Who said between the 12 and 1300 buildings, stay at least 500 feet away? Who said that?
That was Deputy Peterson.
Okay. And now 22902.
Stay away from floor.
Down.
Five.
Gary, does he know where the shooter is?
That voice, pause for a moment. The next one will be 245. That voice you just heard saying, Perry, does he know where the shooter is?
That was Deputy Peterson.
No doubt in your mind that it was Deputy Peterson asking Perry, Deputy Perry, does he know where the shooter is?
Correct.
And finally, 245, please.
245 is not on this.
You can use the other audio.
Use the other audio. But
I'd like to have 245. Thank you.
Just for the record, what is, I just like to go on the record piece of evidence that the state entered. What number is it? This is state's 8 before dispatch. It's an evidence.
Understood. You may proceed to the point that counsel wants it on, please. Sure.
A 17 Juliet 3, 17 Bravo 3, 17 Bravo 4.
17 Juliet 3, we have possible, could be Parkland, because I think we got shots fired. Witness off. I'm going to be bringing the witness back to the CT for additional debrief.
Can we get a race at the Sawgrass on the Coral Springs side?
1200, I need him to come in here.
48.
That's 35. We're looking for 245.
Rest ready. Canine 500. No canine should be tracking unless they're coming and meeting with me on the north side of the school parking lot entrance so we can coordinate. Repeat, no canine from any agency should be deploying unless they 56 with me on the north side of the school. 17 Bravo.
245. 25. 245, 25.
He's 48. Notify them.
500. We have a few of us at just 197. Is that where you want us to 56 you?
10-4. North side of the school. So we can all coordinate our response, please.
Copy.
This is Hongville SWAT medics.
Go off to the dispatch. I need the subject's name, and I'm going to talk to a student and see if I get a picture.
10-4. Should be a.
Thank you. Do you remember? Thank you. Did anybody talk to you about your actions that day?
As far as?
Any law enforcement agency ever sit you down to say, hey, tell us what happened?
Florida Department of Law Enforcement conducted an investigation.
Do you remember who it is who you met with?
First name Keith. I don't remember his last name.
Riddick sound familiar?
That sounds
Keith
familiar,
Riddick?
yes, sir.
So you met with Inspector Keith Riddick from FDLE, did you not?
I did, sir.
How long after this occurred did you meet with him?
I want to say it was the summer of 2018.
So nobody met with you right after, like days after this occurred, correct?
No, sir.
Who was your police chief at the time?
Chief Tony Pastizzi.
Okay. Did he ever publicly say anything negative about your actions?
He did not.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Did you ever meet with Detective Strauss from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Safety Commission?
You mean Detective Seuss?
I'm going to check some relevance on this as well.
Yeah, what's the relevance of this? You're talking about further in time.
Yes.
What's the relevance?
That he did share certain things with that investigator that I'd like to get into.
No, that's sustained.
It is your position today, I'll end on this, it is your position that everything that you did that day that we just talked about was consistent with your training, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Can you read it, Rick?
Yes, Your Honor, may I just have a 5-minute bathroom break?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, real quick 5-minute restroom break. Again, please don't discuss the facts of the case, the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony amongst yourselves or anyone else until we reach the end of the trial. I'll tell you when that is. If you leave the notepads in your chairs and step in the back for me for a real quick restroom break, I will be right back with you. Thank you.
That's segment number 1. There is more to come. Press subscribe so you don't miss any of our continuing coverage. I'm Tony Bruschi. Stay with us.
This has been a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.